Good afternoon. This is Dyke Hendrickson, and I am the host of the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. We meet once a week and talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River. We're on 96.3 radio, local cable, Comcast Channel 9. And we talk, as I say, we talk about the health and history of the river. If you're watching, here's where the Nashua River meets the Merrimack. I'm excited today because this is our 99th podcast. That means we started some 2 years ago. We've been at it. We've talked to many leaders in the community. We've talked to scientists. I've shown numerous slides. I've written 3 books in that period of time: Nautical Newburyport, New England Coast Guard Stories, and recently the book Merrimack, the Resilient River. And I'm excited that this is number 99 today, which of course means next week is number 100. And next Tuesday, Mayor Donna Holaday of Newburyport is going to be my guest. And she knows a great deal about the river. And not only does she know about the river, but she has been really a good custodian of the river. She's been mayor at least 10 years. She was a city councilor before that. She's not running again, but she's going to be talking about some of the challenges of the river. And I am looking forward to that. From 2012 to 2017, I was a reporter with the Daily News here in Newburyport, and I covered City Hall and I covered the waterfront. But the big job was City Hall. So I spent a lot of time with Mayor Holaday, and I know that she's done a lot of work for the river. I mean, the job of mayor, Newburyport is a community of 18,000, so there are a lot of small cities larger than Newburyport, but there's a lot going on in this community, and Mayor Holaday has done a lot. One thing that let me talk to her about is she was a leader in creating a warning system on the Merrimack River. This warning system is being activated this summer for the first time. And so when there's a sewage overflow upriver, in other words, when it gets very rainy and the rain goes into the sewage treatment plants, and the sewage treatment plant gets overwhelmed by effluent and rainwater, then they have to discharge everything. So many millions of gallons of effluent goes into the Merrimack River. We have talked about this. It's called an overflow, it's combined sewage overflow. And Mayor Holaday was one of the first leaders in Eastern Massachusetts to push for a warning system. So for instance, if there's a CSO in Lowell or in Haverhill, until recently, the sewage treatment plant operator would not have to say anything about that. When I remember going to some meetings as a reporter, and someone asked the sewage treatment manager up in Lowell if they warn anybody after they've had these overflows, and they said, no, we're not required to do that, which is true, but it did beg the question, well, if there are millions of gallons of bacteria and effluent coming down, especially in the summer, wouldn't it be useful to know? Anyway, Mayor Holaday was one of the real leaders in getting a warning system, and that's being set up this summer. She also was very helpful in supervising legal work that took place along the Merrimack River and Plum Island several years ago. You might recall in about the winter of 2015, we had a terrible winter. It was cold. There was a tremendous amount of snow, and many houses on Plum Island, their sewage systems backed up. They couldn't get water into their houses. Now, this, as I understand it, was because the developer of these systems on Plum Island had never put in a sewage system this far north. So it raised the question of like, who's minding the store? You put in a sewage system that's good for Virginia or Georgia, but this is northern New England. Anyway, my point is Mayor Holaday, who is a lawyer, really got a legal case together against the architects and the developers of this water and sewage system, threatened to go to court and got several $1 million, which has been used to improve the sewage system, improve the water system. So it took tenacity on her part. Also, it took knowledge of the law, but she did a good job with that. And I remember there were times when I was a reporter, and sometimes in the spring, like 2015 or 16, we'd be driving along with Tony Fernari, who is the head of Public Works. And I remember one week, it was after like 4 or 5 days of rain. The river looked brown. There were not many boats on, this is April or May, but you could tell that there had been many sewage overflows and that something had to be done. No one, downriver was warned, and this great amount of effluent came our way. Now, the environmental protection agencies, both at the federal and state levels, they know about these problems, and they refer mostly to Haverhill, Lawrence, Lowell, and Manchester, New Hampshire. It doesn't pertain to Newburyport because our system does not have a similar sewage overflow problem, but those big cities upriver definitely do have a problem, and so they will have to do better in the future. Manchester, New Hampshire, by the way, is the largest polluter on the river when these things happen, but they just entered into an agreement with the federal and state EPAs and with state officials in New Hampshire to clean up part of their sewage problem. They have a 20-year program they've just launched. It's going to cost $132 million. So Manchester is going to start getting cleaner. Lowell is working to get cleaner as well. So people like Mayor Holaday have been helpful in going to these meetings and saying that, you folks upriver, I know you say you don't have any money to improve your systems, but we're downriver, and we're the ones who suffer with all that pollution coming downriver. So I've got to say she's been very effective with that. She also, I believe, was part of the Voyagers journey 2 summers ago. You may recall that 15 or 20 public officials started up in New Hampshire, in Franklin, New Hampshire, and spent 4 days in the kayaks coming down the Merrimack. She didn't go the whole 4 days, but she was part of it. Now, the river is 117 miles long. It started in Franklin, New Hampshire. It ended on Plum Island. And it was 2 years ago, August, when they did that. And that was really very helpful. At the end of each afternoon, the Voyagers would pick up their kayaks and come out, and they'd meet with the media, they meet with public officials. In other words, they'd say, basically, the Merrimack's a beautiful river, but there's pollution in it, and we've got to keep working to keep it clean, because sometimes the river is getting dirtier, not cleaner. So Mayor Holaday was also very helpful with that. Now, she's not running again. We're going to talk to her also about why she's not running again. So in general, as you might be able to say, I'm looking forward to next week, and I've kind of waited to do so. I mean, we've had numerous public officials on this show. State Senator Diana DiZoglio has been on several times. Jim Kelcourse, the representative state rep from Amesbury, has been on several times. Jared Eigerman, the head of the city council, has been on. And so we've had a lot of very good officials on, but to get Mayor Donna Holaday for our 100th is very exciting. And so we're going to be doing that next week. And it has been fun for all these 99 or 100 shows that we've been doing. We're on 96.3 radio, FM radio, Joppa radio, and we're on local Channel 9 Comcast TV. So I'm just showing a few photos of the river. This is in Lowell. That's UMass Lowell to the right. And I chose this slide because it shows how much has been done to the river in places like Lowell. There are locks, there are dams, and all of this is to harness the hydropower. Now, the hydropower began to be used about almost exactly 2 centuries ago. In the 1820s in Lowell, this was a new science, getting on a river, harnessing the hydropower, enabling it to power textile mills and shoe factories. And for a while, this part of the North Shore of Massachusetts was kind of the Silicon Valley of this country. Hydropower was new, it was cheap, and Lowell and Lawrence, Manchester, Haverhill, they were all among the first communities in the country to have hydropower and to run mills with that. The Merrimack is still very much used throughout the whole North Shore. This is a image in Lowell, Massachusetts. It shows that many things can be done. This is upriver from the dams and the textile factories, but you can see some folks fishing, you can see jogging, there are people on benches, there are people walking babies. So state conservation leaders are working to clean the river so that fish can thrive again. But as you can see, people also thrive. Lowell continues to have many factories and mills. A lot of them, of course, have been converted over the years. Some of the old buildings in Lowell are used for education, for health, for many reasons. And I often say when I look at a photo like this, and we are looking at a string of 4 or 5 brick structures in Lowell, in addition to textiles, the business of brick making must have been very large. Look at all those bricks, and this is just a small piece of the North Shore. And if you've ever driven on 495 past Lawrence, you see, yards, many football fields worth of brick factories. Manchester, New Hampshire, which is shown here, excuse me, has been very successful in remaking itself. On the lower right, you can see some of the old mills from the Amaskee Manufacturing Company, which was the largest employer in New Hampshire for many years. It started going away in the 30s, but they've repurposed. But you can see today, Manchester is a beautiful community. And this photo shows hotels, business offices, apartment buildings. So Manchester has made a good transition into the modern world. Here is, this is a photo, if you're listening, this is Jim Kelcourse in the photo. He's a state rep. Behind him in this photo in kayak is Lane Glenn. He is the president of Northern Essex Community College. And as I mentioned before, in August of 2019, city officials and executives, people who ran nonprofits, came down the river. They took 4 days, and there's 117 miles. And it was just, a significant moment for them. I know they learned a lot. I've interviewed many of them afterwards, but it also brought attention to the river. Here's the photo. There's not so much whitewater. What we're looking at, if you're listening, is pictures of about a dozen voyagers that are coming down through the Lawrence Lowell area. And this is calm water, and they're taking a break. The kayaks are very colorful, and it just was a very exciting time for those people. That was August of 2019. This is a photo of one of my favorite scenes, the harbor at Newburyport. It marked the end of the run for the voyagers, but seen here are scores of pleasure boats in Newburyport Harbor. And we must remember that the harbor wasn't always beautiful, even in the modern era. Until the early 70s, it was very polluted, very dirty, and the boating industry was quite minimal. But after the Clean Water Act of 1972, the river got cleaner and more people began coming to the Merrimack River. Here's a beautiful shot. This is the town line of Amesbury and Merrimack. Some of you may have driven by it, but it just shows you how beautiful the Merrimack can be. We're looking now at a photo of fishing vessels. There's still about 8 or 10 in Newburyport Harbor in the summer. Fishing is an industry, of course, that used to be a thriving industry in Newburyport and Amesbury and Salisbury. You know, federal regulations changed, a lot of fish disappeared, but there's still 8 or 10 vessels out there, and they do a lot of fishing. Of course, recreational fishing is popular as well. You're listening to Life Along the Merrimack. I'm the host, Dyke Hendrickson. We talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River, 96.3 Joppa Radio FM, and also on cable TV, local Channel 9, Comcast. But the fishing used to be a vibrant industry, not so much anymore. We had mentioned a couple of these voyagers before, and here is a cheerful picture of 2 of them. That's Jim Kelcourse in the stern. He is a state rep from Amesbury. That's State Senator Diana DeZoglio. She's from Methuen, but she represents about 6 or 8 communities. I noticed Jim Kelcourse is thinking of running for mayor of Amesbury, so we'll have to learn more about that. The river has always been used as a source of drinking water. And even today, 2021, more than 500,000 people get their drinking water from the Merrimack. That's a lot. One of the people who helped clean up the drinking water, she's shown here, is Ellen Swallow Richards. This goes back to 1890 or so. She was the first woman graduate of MIT in about 1883. And then she joined a team to help improve the drinking water on the Merrimack. In about 1890, there was numerous examples of typhoid on the river. Young people, families, working families who lived near the river were getting their drinking water from the river and were getting typhoid. Now, there was science to cleaning the water. They weren't drinking it straight from the river. But as we learned, it wasn't very good science. So Ellen Swallow Richards joined a half dozen other individuals on a panel, and she was a leader in coming up with a better way to make clean drinking water. She was also, there were numerous men on the panel, I should say that. She was the woman that I chose, because in my reading of history, women have always been instrumental to society, but have not always been lauded as the leaders. She was a great leader. She is known as the mother of home economics because in the 1890s and after in Cambridge, she helped families learn more about balanced diets, learn more about having a clean kitchen. She instituted a free lunch program in Cambridge schools where she lived. So she was ahead of her time. She was modern to her time. She was really a great individual. Another great individual when we think about the Merrimack and all rivers in New England is Ed Muskie. He's shown here. He was the sponsor of the Clean Water Act in 1972. And this was a picture from his early days in Washington. This is another photo of Muskie. If you're listening, this is the cover of Newsweek magazine. He ran for vice president with Hubert Humphrey. He tried to get the presidential nomination in 1972, did not get it, but he was a real warrior when it came to clean air and clean water. This is a photo of Muskie in the later years, mid 70s. That's his wife, Jane, to the left. And he was a great proponent of clean water. Senator George Mitchell, also from Maine, was a great leader. In 1987, he created amendments to the Clean Water Act. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan wanted to get rid of grants for sewage treatment plants. And Senator Mitchell and other Democrats said, all right, if you're going to get rid of the grants, at least let us have low interest loans to build sewage treatment plants. And so Mitchell was very important in getting low interest loans. And though that program still exists today, and people like Congresswoman Lori Trahan of the Lowell area, Seth Moulton of the North Shore, as we speak, they're trying to get low interest loans for places like Lowell, Lawrence, and Haverhill so they can improve their sewage treatment plants. A great champion of the river was Paul Tsongas. Here's a photo of him. He was a champion of Lowell and also the river. This is a wonderful photo of the family, Nikki Tsongas and the two children. She, of course, served in Congress after he left. And of course, he died in 1997 at the age of 56. So we're looking at a shot of his gravesite, which is adjacent to the Merrimack River. Here's a good photo of the Whittier Bridge. It was an expensive utility put together some years ago, but is very important for this area and, of course, for northern New England. It cost about $300 million, and it went off pretty well. And I think we all have used it from now and then. There's a bike path. There are, historical notes on the river, on the bridge itself. So they did a good job. This is the Merrimack River. This is a photo we don't like to see. This is up in Methuen. Now, this is not from a sewage treatment plant. This photo shows a rainwater drain, but it also depicts several shopping carts. And so great amounts of pollution can get into the river. And over the years, since I've been working on the paper, reading the paper, you've probably seen as well, tires have been pulled out of the river. Hypodermic needles have been pulled out of the river, cars on occasion. So the Merrimack has beautiful spots and some on occasion not so beautiful. This is a photo in Newburyport. That is a drain pipe. Again, it's not from the sewage treatment plant. It's from picking up rainwater, but the city is trying to get rid of drainage pipes like this because, it comes down from High Street. So there's gas, there's petroleum, there's probably beer cans. It's not a good thing. So they're trying to improve as well. Here's a beautiful photo. We're looking at the Merrimack River in the Amesbury, Haverhill area. There's a lot of development that's gone in recent years on the North Shore and up in New Hampshire, but this shows how beautiful the river can be. The Merrimack River here, the Newburyport Salisbury Bridge, this is at sunset. A fellow named Dan Grovac took that. He is the chair of the board of directors of the Merrimack River Watershed Council. He's a wonderful photographer. So he took a great photo here. Here's Senator DiZoglio again. She's done a lot of work, and last year helped create the Merrimack River Commission. This is a clean water photo. It's a little strange. President Nixon on the left, Hubert Humphrey, the late Hubert Humphrey, and then Ed Muskie. The three of them worked together in 1970 to create the Environmental Protection Agency. So Nixon turned out to be a rogue in Watergate, but his name is on the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, which started in 1970. This is the end of my presentation. I speak from time to time to different groups. Zoom, I'm speaking to the Maritime Museum in August during Yankee Homecoming and the Coast Guard Week. So I look forward to meeting you perhaps. I have written a book. Here's what the book looks like, the cover of the book. It's called Merrimack, the Resilient River, an illustrated profile of the most historic river in New England. So I've enjoyed being with you. This is Life Along the Merrimack. I am Dyke Hendrickson, the host. This is 96.3 Joppa Radio and Comcast TV, Channel 9. We meet once a week. Sometimes we're repeated. We talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River. And we're coming up to the 4th of July, which is one of the biggest days on the river. We're also coming up next week, the 29th, to the 100th episode of, or the 100th version of this program. So I look forward to it. Mayor Donna Holaday will be with us next week on Life Along the Merrimack. This is Dyke Hendrickson, the host, and we will meet again in about a week. Thank you for being with us.